Outdoors Queensland respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands where we gather across Queensland and interstate. We pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the important roles that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples play in relation to the land, sky and waterways that are used for outdoor activities. I'm in Brisbane, Meanjin on Yagara country. If you'd like to, you could pop into the chat the place in the country you're joining from today. Outdoors Queensland also acknowledges the funding that's provided by the Queensland Government to support outdoor activities. And it's actually more than funding. It's about so much, you know, the contributions that the government does make in relation to outdoor activities. So just want to acknowledge that. There's a whole lot of work that a lot of government departments and ministers do and have done for a long time regarding outdoor activities. And that includes sport and recreation, who we certainly work closely with, as well as other departments. As I said, welcome to today's session of Coffee and Conversation. My name is Dom Courtney, Executive Officer of Outdoors Queensland. Operations Manager Mark Squires is my co-host for today's session. Thanks, Mark. Hopefully you won't mute me too many times during the session, but you never know, you're lucky. I'd like to welcome everyone. And as I said, the recordings of the sessions will be available afterwards. This is number 16, episode 16 of Coffee and Conversation for 2021. And as I said, it's Friday the 13th, so hopefully there'll be some good luck involved in that. A bit of an agenda, as we usually have, some recurring topics there up the top, and some updates, a few reminders, and then we'll get stuck into new topics to talk about today. And if anyone else has any other topics, feel free to pop it in the chat. I just saw Gavin's popped in there that he's come across from the Queensland Walking Alliance Action Plan Workshop. So I don't know if you wanted to give any update on that one later on, Gavin, more than happy if you're interested. So just speak up, you know, towards the end and we can do that. Yeah, that'd be great. So just on the award nominations, the awards, it's going to be an online event this year, last Friday of October, the 29th of October. But right now the award nominations are open. So really encourage you to nominate a person or organisation. You can nominate yourself or your organisation. It's really about people who've done terrific things in the outdoors in Queensland. So, but nominations will close at the end of August. So there's a couple of weeks left to do that. But really would love to see plenty of strong nominations. I think we said the same thing last year. It doesn't necessarily have to be things that have only been done this year. Some people have been quite obviously disrupted by the wonderful world of COVID that we're all over, but it could be about things that have happened in the past, but it could also be about celebrating the really good things that have been going on in the last 12 months or so. So we're quite happy. We want to see as many solid nominations as possible to make the judging as difficult as possible for the judges. And Mark and I aren't judges, so we're happy to have heaps of really good nominations to make it hard. Yeah, so just wanted to remind you about that one. And also the Active Queenslanders Forums. They were scheduled to be held in August in Brisbane and on the Sunshine Coast, but they're being rescheduled at the minute, again, due to COVID, as you might expect. So the new dates will be announced shortly on those ones. A few other things there. Inside the Outhouse, as we do, I'd like to give a reminder and a shout out to Inside the Outhouse. And I can see we could have a fight on our hands because Dave Maskell's here, but he's not an Inside the Outhouse shaking his head, but Pete Smith's here. So Pete, would you like to give us an update on what next Monday's session will be about?
Can do, Dom. Morning, everyone. Inside the Outhouse, next Monday we have the QD's climbing organisation, and they're coming in to talk everything diversity and inclusivity around the climbing community. So if you're a climber and you're into inclusivity and diversity, then feel free to jump in the room next Monday at 13 minutes past 6 Australian Eastern Standard Time. Thanks very much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Pete. The other couple of things there, the Better Futures Forum, that's about climate action. So it's an online forum next week. I'm going to speak as part of a panel regarding outdoor operators, tourism and climate action. That's on Wednesday. You've probably already got it marked in your diaries, but yeah, there's that one's coming as well next week. The Queensland Stock Route Network Review, that's open for people to have their say. The reason I bring it up, not because I think you've all got herds of cattle and flocks of sheep. The Stock Route Network is Queensland's largest trail network. There's over 72,000 kilometres of Queensland roads that are declared stock routes. So, and it also includes reserves for camping. So we will make a submission, but I would also strongly encourage others to complete the survey or make submissions to emphasise the significance of that stock route network for outdoor activities. And there's a lot more info on their website. The discussion papers, as you'd expect, it's heavily focused on how much should we charge per animal, that sort of thing. But it's also about a chance to talk about the other values in there. So other couple of things, business support grants. It's a Queensland government process. The website now says that those grants will open mid-August. Given it's the 13th, I would say we're fairly well approaching mid, but hopefully that'll be open soon. It's basically grants available to small and medium businesses right across Queensland who've been affected by COVID-19 lockdowns. It's not just businesses in southeast Queensland or Cairns and Yarrabah. And I think the basic requirement is you have to be able to show at least a 30% reduction in turnover as a result of the lockdown. It can literally be a comparison of the week of lockdown this year compared to that same week 2 years ago. They're not comparing it to 2020 because I think there's a whole lot of lockdowns going on and impacts. So that's what I attended a webinar about it, and that's what they're trying to do, is literally compare 1 week in 2021 to a week in 2019. If you can show a 30% reduction in turnover, then you will be eligible for that one. And Mark's just shared the link there to that one. And the bottom one is the tourism and hospitality sector COVID-19 lockdown support. That one's another Queensland government one, and again, it's for those operators, but it's about things like payroll tax deferral and fee waivers for that would have otherwise been paid to state government, land tax, rent deferral, those sort of things. So it's worth having a look at if you, particularly for tourism operators and hospitality operators, have a look at that and see if you are eligible for that one. That's already available on the website right now. So, and Mark shared that link to that one as well. All right. I just wanted to highlight, I mentioned this one a fortnight ago, Sport and Rec are offering some free online workshops during August, and they're opportunities to learn and develop organisations. I think there's still spaces available on those, but there's only a few left apparently. So if you get a chance and you're available, strongly encourage you to attend those ones. So well, one of those has actually been, but the other three are still next week or the following week. So maybe have a look at that one. All right. The next one is actually a UQ research project that I just wanted to bring to your attention. It's actually about skin cancer prevention in outdoor workers. So we were just contacted by a researcher from UQ, and they're developing this project. It's all about digital health interventions in skin cancer prevention, which is about smartphones, tablets, portable devices, etc. And there's two separate surveys, and they're anonymous. One's the organisation, so it might be an HR manager, it could be a business operator. And then there's a survey they want to deliver to outdoor workers as well about these sort of things. And they're really keen to get as many organisations as possible involved in it. So we can provide contact details, or there's a story on our website that Mark's just shared a link to, which has the details of researcher from UQ. And I think, you know, the more people who can contribute to it, the better. It makes the outdoor sector included in the research. So yeah, just wanted to flag that one. Yeah, Mark's just shared that story. Moving right along. COVID-19 fatigue. I sort of pinched these diagrams or infographics from Queensland Health. They put them out on their social media, and I just thought there's probably no better time to actually talk about some of this stuff, which is that first diagram. If you took away the hair and possibly broadened the waist circumference of that, I feel like it's a bit of a diagram of me at the moment. There's the low in energy, tired, irritable, forgetful, lack of motivation and worn out. I don't know about everyone else, but I think that is a pretty good summary of what COVID-19 is doing to people, as well as, you know, the other health impacts. But Queensland Health have put this out with some tips to help manage that. And I just wanted to go through that. I thought it might be a good opportunity to sort of check in and discuss it. So their first one there about reducing screen time, listening to podcasts, taking a break from social media, and rewatching your favourite film. We discussed this as a team at our team meeting, the Outdoors Queensland team meeting the other day. I did say to the team, I'm not sure how many times you could watch Uncle Buck, but it is a very good movie. So it would help a lot, I think. So yeah, so that's sort of their first slide there. The next one is about the setting news limits, you know, limiting the number of times you check the news, looking for good news, those sort of things. And then I do like the head start the day with movement. That's one that I've certainly tried to do. Eating well, everyone, especially in the outdoors, knows the importance of eating well. I think Inside the Outhouse did a whole session on eating well in outdoor programs. So, you know, I think I said to David, the outdoor world marches on its stomach. So we've got that one there. And hydrating, sharing good recipes. They had a whole one on moving your body. So getting bendy with a yoga mat, taking a walk outdoors, using our world to help everyone, which is great. Dancing around the house is one I haven't done a lot of, but maybe I should. And Googling home workouts. And the final one they had was practice mindfulness, breathing exercises, a gratefulness diary, gratitude diary, reading or tidying up your space. And I guess that's probably partly tidying up your mind as well. So I just wanted to flag that. I'm not sure if anyone wanted to say anything about any of those or other things, but I just thought they were an interesting series of resources to share with the group. Oh, well, over to the topic of the week that always seems to be I just saw in the chat a couple of questions about link to those slides. Yeah, we can do that. And another one there from Julie saying they're very accurate. Yeah, they're pretty good. And that first diagram, I think, was the best one. And then David shared the link to what's on the menu as far as the Inside the Outhouse. Thanks, David. So COVID restrictions, I'm sure everyone's aware there's been a series of changes this week. So the roadmap was updated just yesterday. It's been updated a couple of times since our last session, which was a fortnight ago. So this is the latest one. For a little while, there were 3 different sets of rules, one for the impacted areas, one for Cairns and Yarrabah, one for FCQ as we're emerging from lockdowns, one for the rest of Queensland. It's now got to one set of rules for Cairns, Yarrabah and Southeast Queensland, and then the rest of Queensland in the middle column there. It specifically says on there that this is from 11th of August until 4 p.m. Sunday, 22nd of August. Hopefully that won't be extended any further, but yeah, that's what these current restrictions for SEQ, Cairns and Yarrabah areas are about. I think we go through this every fortnight, but I just want to highlight that new normal along the bottom of the roadmap there. You know, the physical distancing, masks, hand hygiene, staying home when sick, checking in with the Checkin Queensland app, rapid response to outbreaks, travel restrictions, COVID safe checklist, and getting vaccinated. That list's getting longer, but I guess if that's what it takes to operate safely, that's what we need to do. I just wanted to say too, there's been a whole lot of support and gratitude expressed for the thousands of people who've been in home quarantine in Queensland because of connections to the outbreaks. And I just want to say on behalf of Outdoors Queensland, really like to thank all those people. And we appreciate how difficult it must have been, particularly when they've been unable to have any visitors and not go outdoors, all in the name of making the broader community safer. So I just wanted to flag that and thank those people. I know a few personally, and yeah, that's certainly been a big effort from everyone who's had to do that to keep the rest of us safe. So thank you. So we've received some advice from Sport and Recreation. They gave us some advice earlier this week, which we distributed. And they provided updated advice just yesterday regarding impacts of restrictions on community sport and recreation activities. So Mark, I think, has already sent that out this morning via another bulletin. It is an updated one. Some of the information is similar, but we did provide it again. The key messages, I'm not going to do a test. I know there's a lot of words on the screen, and I try not to do that in these presentations, but the key messages are: you can do non-contact activities for exercise in groups of 10 or fewer people. And this is about the impacted local government areas. So you can do it. Face masks are mandatory when you're doing non-vigorous exercise with limited exceptions, which includes for safety. But it specifically says organised community sport and recreation is not permitted, including training, coaching and competitions. Just saw Andrew's comment about not many masks being worn at Sunshine Coast Stadium last night. I'm sure that will be closely examined. I think there's a whole lot of talk about some of those restrictions and compliance. The other things that Sport and Rec have said in there, which is information coming from health as well, is if you're not sure, please don't undertake an activity just during this 2-week period. So they're basically saying play it safe, which we'd obviously repeat that. And the other big one is check the Q&As on the government website and use the information there as a guide, even if it doesn't provide specific answers in relation to the activity that you're thinking about. You can contact Sport and Rec on the sr.covid19@dtis.qld.gov.au or Queensland Health on that 13 COVID number, 134268. So both of those are options. I'll just pop that email address in the chat as well, because it is important, without wanting to, without wanting to overload the systems. There is opportunities to seek further clarification. You can also copy us into those if you want to. If you send an email, happy for you to copy me in to those things, or to Outdoors Queensland in general. Any questions on that stuff as which is outlined there, particularly about community sport and recreation? Oh, cool. So just this one's a bit of a reminder, really, more than anything. It's about the COVID safe checklist if you're running a restricted business, and this applies wherever you are in Queensland. The definitions in the schedule of either the business's activities, undertakings, direction, or the one for the impacted areas. So Queensland Health has specifically advised that outdoor ed providers, when they're providing indoor accommodation services, that's a restricted business. and comes within the short-term accommodation category of those ones. So generally for outdoor operators, if it's outdoor only based organisation without accommodation, that's an unrestricted business and you're not required to comply with the COVID safe checklist, but you are required to comply with the rules that apply to that community sport and rec for these 2 weeks. And that's a specific requirement. So that includes the things like the maximum group size of 10 people. Just looking at the chat there, Tim, as far as updating the checklist, what they've now got in the direction is that you've got to use the checklist and apply any changes that are in the direction. I think that's because they realise that as the directions change, it's very difficult for them to get everything updated at the same time. So that it actually is a bit of a, I think they're recognising that they're saying use the checklist, but also you have to comply with whatever other extra restrictions are in place, depending on where you are too. Did I just skip past that one? Sorry. I think we covered that one. The indoor spaces, you do need to comply with the checklist. So yeah, that's a key one. So outdoor operators, the occupant density requirements for indoor venues and events are set out. It does still include the relaxation occupant density for outdoor education providers, which is the same relaxation which has been in place for a few weeks now. They've rolled that onto the new version of it. So it specifically talks about primary and secondary school aged children from the same group participating in camps operated by a school, community group or business, and gives the example of outdoor ed providers, which is great. And it specifically talks about the exemption to occupant density requirements. And also about the Checkin Queensland app. It's mandatory restricted businesses, activities, undertakings. So it doesn't apply to delivery of outdoor activities because it's not a restricted activity, but delivery of indoor aspects, such as accommodation, is restricted. But they've recognised the difficulties in the use of Checkin Queensland app for camps with school-aged children. So they provide a specific exemption which has carried over into the current directions right now. So that one. Now, this is where things got a little bit interesting this week, and I'm not trying to be flippant about this because it's had a big impact, particularly for outdoor ed operators in southeast Queensland, and it'll now apply in Cairns and Yarrabah for the schools up there. So Education Queensland, they've had this COVID-19 planning framework. It's been in place for a while, but they updated it last Sunday, I think it was, or Monday morning, to include this scenario 5, which is the column on the right-hand side of the screen there, which sets out the rules for schools from the 9th of August, so Monday, following on from the lockdown. So the planning framework, as you can see on the screen there, it states that excursions and camps are not permitted for schools, state schools, in the impacted areas post-lockdown. So that includes Cairns and Yarrabah now. So we've been seeking clarification from Education Queensland regarding their position about school camps and other outdoor activities for schools in the impacted area. They've come back to us and advised that they've taken the stance of not allowing excursions and camps and some other activities in this in that framework, basically to prevent state schools to limit travel and comply with. They're saying it's about compliance with the current roadmap. So they've said quite openly that this is in place for those reasons, but also the intention is for it to apply only for the 2-week period while the additional restrictions are in place in the impacted areas. But if restrictions for impacted areas were extended by Queensland Health, then I think that would obviously be reconsidered by Education Queensland. So the framework doesn't set an end date on the scenario 5, it just says from 9th of August. But my understanding is the intent is that as soon as the additional restrictions are lifted, then that'll also be lifted from, that column might even be removed or whatever from their framework. So that's where we're at right now. We've certainly been, working and trying to make sure that there's an understanding of what's going on here. And I guess today I've gone through that pretty quickly, but I guess I wanted to open it up and say, if anyone wants to talk about the impacts of some of those changes that have happened this week, we're aware there's been about 14,000 people in home quarantine, particularly in southeast Queensland, but some up in Cairns and Yarrabah as well. Really, I guess the question is also how are things, how are people reacting to it, and what have you had from your clients and your members or participants in your activities? Really an opportunity for anyone to speak up. No one wants to go first?
I'll be brave. Dom?
Yeah, Dave.
Does it imply that potentially we could still be in a scenario 5 if they extend their restrictions for LGAs, given that the legislation's been extended, the powers under the legislation, until the 27th of September? I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. I don't think so, mate. I think there's still the intent is, like, if you go back to the roadmap, which I can do. It's back a little way through these slides. Sorry for making people dizzy. So in here, it specifically talks here about until 4 o'clock, Sunday, 22nd of August, these extra restrictions. So I think what they've done, they've extended the public health emergency, but that just gives, it really just extends the ability of the Chief Health Officer to make the public health directions. I don't think there's any suggestion. They have to do that every so often because otherwise the directions run out. So I don't think there's any mapping that to that. I think that's just another piece of work that's going on in the background. That's my take on it. I'm really hopeful that I'm not, that I'm right on that one. But
so yeah. Then in regards to whether or not we come in or out of LGA lifted lockdowns on the 22nd of August, given there's only an advisory, not a direction about not leaving those LGAs to run a program, if those restrictions were extended, what would be the response in terms of running a program outside of an LGA that's under the lockdown restrictions?
So
would we not be able to do it? Would it be a bad move to take a group of students into a non-LGA lockdown location and run a program?
Yeah, I think the answer to that one, and this is what Education Queensland have said, that they're saying they're looking at that bottom line of this roadmap, which says reconsider your need to travel outside any affected local government areas as listed above. And I guess that comes down to there's some level of the amount of the need, I suppose, is what they're saying. If you really needed to travel outside, I don't think that there's no problem. Like, there's not actually a direction saying you can't do it. That's why that's got please reconsider. It doesn't say you can't do it. I think the big thing is, so Education have taken the position of that their schools can't. They've just blanket said schools can't do it. They're not going to allow them to do it. But if you're at a private school, independent school, and it depends on I guess the school could make a decision on that as far as going to other centres. And it really is a decision that comes to, your risk aversion, I suppose, but also what's the intent here, and also a little bit of, and we've said this right from March last year, we want to make sure that the outdoor sector is doing the right thing in relation to our community and our clients and everyone who participates in these activities. And there's a risk-benefit process done in this of, is the risk, low enough that the benefits, do they outweigh that? I think realistically, it's also about these next, we're actually 1 week through this period. If it does get extended, I think there's going to be some really difficult decisions being made by a lot of people about how it works. And it'll also depend, if it's extended, what are the restrictions to that? Will they will they be slightly lower than what they are now? I think the intent is that they'll get back to everyone in Queensland being on the same level of restrictions, because it's just so confusing. And I think that there's a understanding about that within the government, within the people who are making these the restrictions, the directions.
It's an interesting point though, like, you know, how do you define a need for a program that's about life skill development, but also putting young people in the outdoors when they may have missed a whole year last year? You know, how does that relate? You know, and how does the community value that against the public health need, I guess? So it's an interesting discussion. Thankfully, I don't have to make that decision.
Yeah, it is a difficult thing, and it's also about all those benefits that the outdoor programs that schools offer, but also that community groups offer, whether it's, you know, Bushwalking Queensland or Scouts Queensland, are offering right now, that we want to make sure people can participate in these activities in the safest possible way. But there's also people's livelihoods on the line in some of these things. There's businesses that are trying to deliver these activities, partly, you know, so that they can deliver all those benefits, but also about being able to continue to run their business into the future and provide those services that are so valuable to the community. So it's a very difficult situation. And part of it too is the fact that because we're not actually in lockdown, there's not the federal government support that could be available for lockdown support, because the answer is, well, we're not in lockdown, we're just in higher levels of restrictions than the remainder of Queensland. So it's also about confidence level of your clients as well, I think, which is going to come into it.
Look, I think the impact already, like we've gone 2 weeks without income. You know, when you tally up all the outdoor education centres that have been affected by this, it's already running to millions of dollars, and, you know, probably easily up to 1,000 staff that have had significant impact. And I think some of the frustration is that it just seems to be a very blunt instrument that they've, you know, with no notice, it got dumped on us on Sunday. That framework's been in place all year, and then all of a sudden a fifth column, you know, appeared in that framework, and so we had no notice of it. But it's a very blunt instrument, because we're in a situation. The advice there is please consider your need to travel outside of any affected LGAs. But the reality of how it's working out is you've got a school that is in the same LGA as a venue that hasn't seen community transmission in weeks or in some cases months, like Scenic Rim, that can't go ahead. And I think, yeah, you know, again, when you see the inconsistency of tonight, 25,000 people can travel from all over those LGAs to come to Suncorp Stadium and then go home again. I mean, where's the perceived risk in a school traveling directly to a campsite and then home again 3 days later with no public contact in between, compared to what will happen at Suncorp Stadium tonight?
Yeah, I'm not going to argue at all. I think there's I guess the only thing you can talk about, and this is something that we certainly had in place with the industry plan, was the understanding of the protocols that were in place to manage what we had. And the stadiums do still have their site-specific plans that are in place, and a whole lot of, you know, as far as having that many people gathered together, I guess part of it is that they are seated in specific areas. If someone there has COVID, there's going to be a whole lot of people who were in a close area to that who will end up as close contacts and will be in lockdown, like in home quarantine. There's no doubt about it. And that's something probably everyone who goes there needs to consider, that those sort of things, that's part of the risk right now. If you choose to go to a gathering like that you are potentially opening up, and it could also cause another lockdown if there is someone with COVID in the community going to an activity like that. The difference is you get to, you know, as you said, what's the risk involved of an entire group of students from a school going to a camp that may be literally down the road from the school, and doing an outdoor program, primarily outdoors particularly, and then having the accommodation side of it. I guess there is a few other things that, you know, that some people are cancelling, some clients are cancelling activities purely because of concerns from, could be parents of the school kids, could also be the fact they don't want to be the school that went off to camp and they ended up, you know, in the midst of an outbreak. So I think there's a whole lot of public confidence issues there in that space. Yeah, so there is a whole lot of different aspects to this that are going on in relation to that. Sorry, my phone's ringing. I just saw David's question about the Department of Education. We have been talking to the Department of Education, so I've been doing that this week at pretty senior levels. We actually asked for it to be escalated to their, I don't know the name of it, they've got basically a committee or as an emergency response group that looked at that sort of thing and approved their framework. So we actually asked about that, and that's where that advice came back to me about, look, it is in relation to the 2-week period and about the limiting travel even within the local government areas, but certainly not allowing schools, you know, from state schools particularly, to travel from southeast Queensland or impacted areas to other areas to go to camps or excursions. And then there's the other one is schools from outside not travelling into those impacted areas as well, which they're certainly quite strong on that. I just saw a guy's comment there. Do you want to speak to that, Guy?
Yeah, sure. Just for curiosity, we've been the industry, out of no fault of our own, has been impacted by a government decision that has made us, means we have no revenue for the 2 weeks, and not accounting for the lockdown. That's different. That's that affected everyone. But these 2 weeks, we've then gone back to being in business. However, a government decision, state government decision, has removed the ability for our clients to use us. So I'm just wondering, as an association, this is why associations exist, to actually, you know, pursue this, as we are open for business, but our revenue has been decimated, destroyed, held back by a decision of the government, and there is no support, interest, care, concern, anything from the same government who has made that decision. So just wondering, does the association have any legal advice or a way to pursue that?
Yeah, not necessarily. I'm not going to give legal advice, but I guess the thing that we, you know, can try to do, and this is about trying to get the government to acknowledge the impact of exactly what you just saying. That's why, you know, we've been talking to the Education Department particularly. But the problem is there's other schools that have also followed the Education Department's lead. So I know private schools, Catholic education, that side of things is certainly happening as well. The problem really is the fact that, yeah, if we're going to do that, it's really about going to the appropriate ministers, such as the Minister for Education, and seeking to have you know, a support package. I know that's been done by the Department of, by Tourism Minister, has put out a specific package. But again, it wasn't about, here's some money to, you know, replace your lost revenue for the 2 or 3 weeks. It was about specifically those things I went through earlier about payroll tax and those sort of things, which really aren't directly going to overcome the issues we're talking about here. There was some things in there, like some state government fees that they are offering to refund. But I think for a lot of people, it's not, those measures aren't going to really have a big impact on operating costs that you've incurred over the last 2 weeks for particularly for small medium businesses. So we can try that option and try to get some support. But I think that the issue is also that the answer is going to be that you haven't been closed, and it's because it's an effective decision of state government, like you said, of the education department and then other schools. It's really the clients of the centres are making the decision not to come. And part of that is one of those biggest clients is the Queensland Education Department.
Yeah, I'd argue that fact that it's the clients, because if you speak to the clients, they want to come. They have been directed, Ed Queensland state schools have been directed not to come. So it's a government, it's not the client's decision not to be here. They have been told they're restricted. So there's 3 players. One player's made a decision and the other 2 players are suffering. And it's not even just about the revenue and the money. I mean, some centres cannot recover that in this financial year, possibly ever. It's more of the responsibility of the decision makers, and hence why we have an association is to make them well and truly aware of the impact of that decision. It's sort of like what the NRL's doing, same along with the construction industry. You know, they're in there and they're making it very clear that the association stands for the people, and that the decisions need to be taken on. All the factors need to be taken aboard, and I just think maybe the association needs to make that a bit clearer with them, especially as they're about to make decisions on Sunday the 22nd, and how the impact that would have. Because at the moment it's all, but it's for the benefit of the health, but it's for the benefit of health. But yeah, I'm just wondering if there's anything we can do apart from writing to our ministers as an association.
Yeah, I think we have been making it very clear to the education department, the senior management in there, about the impacts of this, of these rules, of their framework. I certainly haven't backed away from making that clear to them. It's been probably the key thing that we've been doing this week. So, we are doing that. As far as what I meant about clients, what I meant was the education department as the client rather than the school itself. So the education department, if you think of them as the ultimate client, they've made a decision that none of their schools can go to school camp during this period. So
our contracts are with the individual schools, though. Our contracts are with the individual schools, not Education Queensland.
Yep, but the school has obviously they have to follow the directions of Education Queensland if they're a state school. Like, there's no doubt about that.
So are they then liable for the cancellation fee?
Mate, I've already said I'm not here to give legal advice. If you want to get legal advice, I'd be more than happy if someone wants to share that. But I think the part of this is that it's about what happens beyond these 2 weeks as well. As I said, we've tried to work through the channels with Education Queensland and trying to get further clarification on what they're actually going to do and what their thinking is, because part of this, which really worried me right from the outset, was on that framework, it just said from the 9th of August and didn't provide any end date for when it might happen. And that's actually, I think, spooked a lot of schools, and not just education department schools. So please don't think I'm not working on this. Like, this has been an absolutely key part of this week, which has been the focus that we've been working on. But it's it's also quite frustrating as trying to make a difference to this space as far as trying to turn that ship around.
Dom, is there any chance that we could get a direction before the 22nd, actually during business hours on the Friday? I have programs going out a week after that, and so, yeah, I'm a small operator, but it'd be nice to know whether or not we're not going to have the opportunity to go out. Having a direction change at 4 p.m. on a Sunday makes no business sense.
Yeah, I'd say the only way that'll happen is if Queensland Health make an announcement on the Friday that that those restrictions are going to change on the Monday. And if we've seen anything over the last 18 months, is that those decisions don't tend to get made in advance, that they sometimes are indicated, but even what's going to be in the next level of, the next lot of restrictions, assuming that all this does end on that Sunday, that tends to be announced literally, sometimes at 6 a.m. on the day that it changes. And that's part of this scramble that is an ongoing thing. And completely agree with you, mate, that there is that process. I don't know.
Yeah, excuse me, Dom. Sorry, mate. It wasn't my intent in any way to make it sound as if we weren't appreciating what you're doing. I was just curious if there is, to simplify my question, is there a legal precedent as an association to actually explore the avenue of using the law to our advantage? That's probably it. Nothing to do with the work or that we're not doing enough. Just more curious as what are our rights as an association, as Outdoors Queensland?
Yeah, I mean, mate, we could do that. I guess the question's going to be, I'm not particularly keen to be taking Education Queensland to court, and I don't know how it's going to go with the long-term relationship between Outdoors Queensland and Education Queensland. But I think right now they're going to just say, well, here's the decision we've made. We could go through and do freedom of information, right to information applications for all their decision stuff. We could do all sorts of things. I guess the real answer is, how do we build a collaborative relationship with them and try to go forward and try to get it happening with particularly the education department in this space. Like, we've certainly have been working, with Queensland government in a lot of different ways, and that includes the education department. Like, they've been quite open about how they're trying to manage a lot of these aspects. And like I said, we can explore that sort of thing. I'm not sure that it's going to be an appropriate use of the organisation's limited money to try to get how it would work. But yeah, we could look at that. I think the question is also, what does that do as far as these couple of weeks, which, as I've said, the scary thing that I think is happening is what's happening beyond these 2 weeks, which is what David was just talking about, and the confidence of what that's going to be beyond that. It almost feels like we are still in lockdown, even though we actually aren't. And we need to be thankful for that. But the problem is the restrictions that we've got in place are having such a detrimental impact on so many different aspects of the community, which is also about 3/4 of the population's in Southeast Queensland. So we're talking about that impact on so many different operators, and it goes beyond that, because it goes into the operators who aren't in Southeast Queensland or Cairns and Yarrabah.
It's cut us off from Commonwealth support. That's the big issue for us. The comment there about collaboration, Dom, I don't think anyone in this industry is not interested in collaboration with Education Queensland. It's a question of whether they're interested in collaboration with us. And I mean, that comment there about the NRL, I mean, when we went into lockdown, Peter V'landys was able to call a show and get special treatment for the NRL. There's no dialogue with us whatsoever. And most of us are Queensland businesses or not-for-profits. We've been a Queensland operator and owned since 1927. And these decisions are made without any dialogue with us. And sometimes you wonder, do they actually understand our context? And is there, so I guess I'm asking, is there a way we can actually, maybe not within this crisis, but is there a way to have a dialogue with Education Queensland where they truly understand the professionalism and the high standards that operators have, so that we're not perceived as this risk, unacceptable risk?
Yeah, I think that's a part of the development of the outdoor industry that's certainly been on the agenda for a long time. Like it's about all aspects of it, and sometimes we don't do ourselves any favour when, you know, some of the images that we use to promote some of our activities are actually of the perceived risks, because that's what attracts people to some of these things. But I think that some of that is also, you know, directly in that is about the industry as a whole, the outdoor industry, the professional nature of it, the different parts of the sector, all being on the same page as far as how we market the sector and how we make sure decision makers do understand what we can provide, the benefits of it for so many different people and why it's so important. But you're right, Andrew, that's a thing that we need to say, and a part of that is we want decision makers to be extremely reluctant to cancel or make decisions that negatively impact on the outdoor sector, because they understand the value of the outdoor sector. And that's a whole ongoing process that probably will never end, but it's certainly something that we don't forget about, and we're certainly in that space and talking about the benefits to the participants, but also for the community as a whole. You know, I literally did an interview with the Courier Mail yesterday, which is for an article this weekend, which was about the explosion of camping across Queensland. And they asked, well, what are the benefits of camping? And I rattled off the economic benefits, including the avoided health costs, the connection to nature, the social benefits, the physical and mental health benefits, and obviously also the cultural heritage connections that you can deliver from being outdoors and just, you know, getting away from screens and that sort of thing. So putting that in as many different avenues as we can, that's a part of what we do. I think, you know, as far as trying to ensure that decision makers consider these things, that's certainly a big part of what we do, and it's part of our strategic priorities as an organisation.
Dom,
Yeah,
I saw just on this morning's Sunrise TV show, or maybe it was ABC, somebody from Tourism Tasmania talking exactly about this issue. They've been impacted by the fact that they can't get tourist numbers to support their industry. Their companies are going into the hole, and they were getting that PR and I guess applying pressure. So kudos for having, you know, the Courier Mail, but maybe we need a bigger presence in the mass media, as much as we're a small part of a bigger picture. But yeah, other industries are definitely looking at that and leveraging the mass media to, I guess, apply pressure where it's needed.
Yeah, and sometimes we ride the coattails of some of those things, like particularly the tourism publicity they tend to get. We certainly sometimes ride the coattails of that and can apply that to adventure tourism and also, you know, outdoor activities for locals. And I'm not shy about that. I've told the tourism people that I will do that and continue to do that. It is difficult to get engagement at that level in there, David, because it's, as you said, we're not a huge industry, but what we do, I think, and I'll keep saying this, is vital for the whole community, and so that's our leverage, I guess, into that space. It's just a matter of also convincing the journalists of that and getting that coverage for the sector. But that's also a little bit of what we're looking at out of the OCA summit that was held in May, is about how can we make sure that the entire outdoor sector is better appreciated by the community in Australia. So that's a separate piece of work that's going on as well. But yeah. I'm just looking at some of the comments. I saw Jason's comment about the declared state of emergency, so there's probably little legal avenues to recoup any losses from the government. I'm more than happy to prepare a letter to the minister and try to see if they'll do anything. I'm not hopeful that it'll work, but it might bring it at least at the ministerial level. And I can put a letter together and do that. And it means we'll get a formal response as well. So that we can do that. I don't know what we'll get out of it, but it can't hurt, I suppose, is probably the answer to that question. It's something I haven't done this week because I've been trying to use the internal channels and trying to find out what their decision actually is all about too. So that was where we've got to with that so far. I'm mindful of time. Does anyone else have any other questions, comments?
I think some of the stuff that said, Dom, about things, it's more what I'm tending to find that the issue is particularly what Dave was saying earlier. It's not so much, yeah, we're in lockdown. Well, we're in this 2-week no work period, but it's the fact that there's a whole bunch of different pressures that come on to providers where it's like, well, it's not just, this week and next week, it's also the fact that, for at least for us and our clients, that we're missing out on work the following week because schools aren't, and notionally, I think it's not just the schools and the teachers involved in camp prep stuff. It's also the fact that those schools are getting a whole bunch of stuff back from, example, parents, where if we were actually mentioned in the briefings on Sunday that it was clearly stated that school camps are back on the deck, that's the type of exposure that we need to keep that to give those teachers ammunition back against parents who don't want their kids going on camp to move forward. So for me, it's all about what are we going to do in the next time and how are we going to how we head forward as this stuff progresses, because snap 3-day lockdowns are fine, but if they last 3 days, and then we can get back on track. And that's the part that I think everyone here is struggling with.
Yeah, I think everyone across the community is, and I certainly know everyone, a lot of different providers, and I've spoken to a lot, like, we've had event organisers who at one point this week appeared to be able to run their event this weekend, and then the rules actually changed in between and they couldn't. So you're right, as far as the certainty of when the lockdown's over, what are the rules going to be, and when is it going to go back to whatever the COVID normal situation is, and what are the rules going to be then? The issue is going to be, we don't know that, and it seems like a lot of these rules are literally trying to be worked out for each situation, and then there isn't that certainty, which would make our world, actually more tolerable. And that's the big difficulty, that we don't have the certainty of, as much as we've got a roadmap, which I've still got on the screen there, all that roadmap is really for these next 2 weeks. And we don't know what happens beyond that. And so it's a pretty short road. But I think at the moment, that's all they're confident to talk to from as far as what the restrictions are. Yeah. I mean, like I say, we can try what we can. I'd certainly take on the comments that are in there, and thank you for your support as well for the people who've, reflected on that. But the impacts on all of term 3, yep. And Tanya's also said you can't access wage support because we're not in lockdown, which is dead right, and it's very frustrating. So I guess all I can do is keep continuing to work with the decision makers, whether that's within the department, but also the ministers, and make sure they understand the situation that's going on for outdoor ed providers and also community recreation providers. So any business that's delivering outdoor activities right now in Southeast Queensland and also up in Cairns and Yarrabah is being affected. And so you know, those sort of things certainly need to be considered. And I don't have all the answers, and I'll sort of don't pretend I do to these sort of things, but we'll keep working away on your behalf to try to get some more answers, I suppose. Does anyone else have any comments, questions? Yeah, I just saw Guy's comment. It will remain optimistic. It's just difficult at the moment, Guy, to be honest. And I think if you go back to that COVID fatigue one, I think quite a lot of those points on there are certainly there. I think that you could call it COVID frazzled at the moment, but yeah. I just saw Julie's point there about getting that information out there. We'll keep doing that. If people want to do this again next Friday, then we could look at that too. Mark and I've sort of always said if we're going to do another one, if we've got information early next week, we'll certainly organise another session. More than happy to put that in there. And Mark's just said, so we'll probably make an announcement about that early next week. If we've got an information that makes this worthwhile, we can do that next week. More than happy to do that. We just have to work out time. We could try to do it at the same time. Yeah, and then Mark's also put in those memes if you want to have a look at them. Yeah, Tanya, I think there's a whole lot of inconsistencies just looking at your comment about running a camp near Toowoomba. Yep. And thanks, Andrew, for your vote of thanks. I mean, there's a whole lot of work going on. It's certainly not just Mark and me. It's a whole lot of people, but there's a whole lot of work that is happening in the background. But we'll keep on getting information out there. 12 o'clock this Monday, Sam. Thank you for updating us with that. It said on their website earlier today, mid-August. So I guess that's pretty much mid-August. I would suggest applying for that grant if you're eligible. They've said it'll be open to every business that applies. It's not a first in, first dressed scheme with a maximum cap on it. It's every business that applies for it. If you're eligible, you can get that $5,000. So have a look at the eligibility requirements when they're on their website. Maybe they're there already. So that one, you know, it's $5,000 isn't going to solve everyone's problems, but it's also not going to hurt. And it says that $5,000 can be spent on business operations or something like that. So yeah, it's there for you to access. Certainly understand inconsistencies, which Tanya's just flagged. Gympie schools can go to Toowoomba. Yep. And vice versa. Yeah, I think it's really trying to get it beyond this 2 weeks. I can't explain any of those ones, but they're fair observations, I think. So we just ticked over midday. Happy to finish up there if everyone is. Gavin, maybe you could give us an update on the Walking Alliance next week. It is next fortnight, or September is Queensland Walks Month. So we'll probably get Anna to come on and from Queensland Walks to talk to us as well. So we might park that one for now. Gavin's just shared the link to Walk Month 2021. Thanks, mate. Great way to finish. There is opportunities there. They want feedback and input and people to log your walks and that sort of thing. So thank you very much for everyone for joining us. Yeah, I'm sorry we didn't have a whole lot of positive news, but we will keep sending out information as we've got it. And Laurie's just noted that at least we're not in New South Wales. It's a fair point, although your border does butt up to ours, and we get a bit worried about that sometimes, Laurie. So
yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right. And Aaron in Victoria, mate, good luck with your lockdown and congratulations on completing your qualification recently, Aaron. But yeah, there's some good things about lockdown. You get a chance to study and stuff. Don't forget the Inside the Outhouse on Monday, 6:15 or 6:13. Aaron's up to 218 days of lockdown. That's not terrific. So thanks very much, everyone. And we'll let you know if we are going to do another session next week. But we'll keep up the updates and that sort of thing. So thanks very much for joining us today. And look forward to talking to you or seeing you all soon. Bye now.